Hope everybody enjoyed their holidays. We are going to go into the new top 5 best loadouts for Warzone 2. Now, this is for the grinders. I know it's been tough playing Warzone 2 for a lot of people, and some people it's just not their cup of tea, but I want to make it a little bit easier for you guys. So, if you guys want good loadouts, I'm giving you guys right here. So this is actually the strongest loadout I can give you right now. It's the Tac-V, and I'm trying to give you as little recoil as possible. So if you guys didn't know, this is actually strongest weapon damage-wise, and the fact that I can actually make it very little recoil, along with the tuning, just makes it perfect. So we're going to start out with the Kastovia DX90. Put the bullet velocity at 0.84 inches, just because at that point it no longer benefits anymore. And the recoil smoothness to 0.90 ounces. This helps with sound suppression, bullet velocity, recoil smoothness, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, aim walking speed, and aiming stability. No big deal. We move on to the 18-inch precision 6-barrel. Max out the damage range, increase recoil steadiness by 0.39 pounds, helps with the damage range, hip fire accuracy, and bullet velocity, reduces aim down sight speed, and hip recoil control, which doesn't even matter. The Aim Op V4 is one of the biggest contributors to this lack of recoil. I mean, obviously these help a whole lot, but this is another thing. The visual recoil is what helps so much. Now, you move the eye position to far at negative 1.65 inches. I did not change the aim down sight speed or flinch resistance just because I feel that it's unnecessary. Now, I put on the 50-round drum. If you want to use the 30-round, you can. It's just going to help you with your movement overall. Also with the aim down sight speed, sprint to fire, etc. And last but not least, F-Tac Ripper 56 helps with aiming idle stability, hip fire accuracy, and recoil stabilization. We're not really here for the hip fire accuracy, but everything else. It reduces aim down sight speed and walking speed, but I tuned the aiming idle stability by 0.23 inches and maxed out the recoil stabilization. Now I'll show you guys what happens when we get into the firing range. Short range, no recoil. Mid range, very little recoil. Long range, absolutely beautiful. I think this is something that you definitely should consider. It's a very fantastic weapon to have. Next, we're moving on to the Fennec, and this is still the strongest SMG overall. I've seen some different variations of loadouts, but I really like this one right here. It's the ZLR 16.5 ignition barrel. Increase the damage by 0.25 inches. Increase the recoil steadiness by 0.50, so it's maxed out. This helps with the damage range, bullet velocity, hip fire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. Put on the VLK Laser 7MW. This helps with aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and sprint to fire speed at the cost of the laser being visible in ADS. Make sure you keep that in mind. Agile Assault 7 stock. This helps sprint speed, aim walking speed, crouch movement speed, and aim down sight speed at the cost of aiming stability and recoil control, which we're going to fix anyway. Now we max out the aiming idle stability at 2.4 inches and reduce the weight by 2.06 ounces to help with the aim down sight speed. Put on the Fennec rubber grip. This helps sprint to fire speed and aim down sight speed at the cost of recoil control. I did not change the width. I increased the weight by 0.42 ounces because at that point it's no longer beneficial. And then the Fennec Mag 45. Now, despite all the recoil decreases, you're going to see something insane. Get into the firing range. No recoil. No recoil, and the only downside is long range. You're just gonna have to burst fire, so just keep that in mind. But this thing is a no recoil machine that shoots incredibly fast, so I would highly recommend, I mean extremely highly recommend using this as your primary SMG. Next, we're moving on to the RPK. This has very little recoil, and I think it's easy for anybody to just pick up and use. We're gonna start out with the Polar Fire S. Now we increase the bullet velocity by 0.32 inches and the recoil smoothness by 0.32 ounces. This helps with the sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness. Put on the Tac 597 barrel. This helps with the damage range, hip fire accuracy, movement speed, and bullet velocity. Now, I tuned the damage range to increase by 0.26 inches and the recoil steadiness to point by 0.27 pounds. Remember, the cons are recoil control, hip recoil control, and aim down sight speed. So I did want to compensate for the recoil control a little bit. Now we put on the Aim Op V4. Once again, max out the far to 1.65 inches. Did not change the weight. Put on the Demo X2 grip for increased recoil control, and then we tuned it even more so that recoil steadiness is at 0.74 ounces. And then we put on high velocity. Max out the bullet velocity, increase the damage range by 0.43 Gs, because at that point, it no longer benefits. So, just show you guys how good this thing is in the firing range. It's so little recoil that it's like you don't even really notice it in the first place. I mean, I just think that it's definitely worth having. I mean, if you mount it, it'll be even easier to control. But as you guys see, like it's not hard for me to really just use this weapon at any range. So definitely throw this on there. If you don't really try too much with aiming, you just want to have a good amount of damage, it's not going to hit as hard as the Tac-V, but you're going to have 0 recoil. Next, we're going to move on to the TAC-56, and this is for my OGs that love just using an iron sight. We're going to start out with the Harbinger D20. We're going to tune it ourselves, actually, because I wanted to show you guys this build fully decked out personally, just to show you guys what could actually benefit you and what may help, what may not help. So gonna increase the bullet velocity and max it out just so around about 0.8. At that point, I mean, I don't really think you need to change it much anymore. And then the recoil smoothness, if you want to increase that. Now, this is going to be the downside. You can potentially raise your aim down sight speed for this build, or you can max out the no recoil. I would suggest maxing out no recoil because this is Warzone, and you're most likely going to be using this at a distance. So you're going to put the recoil smoothness probably around 0.53. I mean, 0.50 is probably solid. You don't really need to go beyond there. It does help, but as you guys see, it's not that much. So about 0.50 is pretty solid. Next, we're going to move on to the Tundra, 17.5 Tundra Pro Barrel. This is already tuned. It's the damage range increased by 0.40 inches, and the recoil steadiness by 0.35 pounds. Increases the damage range, hip fire accuracy, and bullet velocity at the cost of aim down sight speed and hip recoil control. Next, we're moving on to the FSS Combat Grip. This helped the recoil control. We increased the aiming out stability to 0.35 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.55 ounces. Put on the 60-round mag and then high velocity. We max out the bullet velocity and increase the damage range by 0.61 Gs because at that point it no longer benefits. And just show you guys in the firing range how good this is. Remember, this is the iron sight. No recoil in that long range. It's so good. So I highly recommend using this build. Like, if you're not using this build, then you may not kill as fast as you may want to. So just give it a try. Last but not least is the Kastov 762, and this is basically for the people that liked using the AMAX. The AMAX was a heavy hitter at the cost of a little bit of recoil. This is going to be an AMAX 2.0. This is going to be better than the AMAX because it's not going to be as much recoil, but it's going to be a high amount of damage. Start out with the Polar Fire S. This is for sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness. Now, you increase the bullet velocity by 0.77 inches and the recoil smoothness by 1.26. I mean, you can definitely max it out, but at this point, I didn't really see a significant change. So you see, like, maybe you could stop it somewhere around, like, I don't know, maybe 70. And you see there's no significant change at that point. So I feel like that's a safe point, but I did max out bullet velocity because I did see consistent change. Now, Cast 10, 584 millimeter barrel. I increased the damage range by 0.28 inches and the recoil steadiness by 0.26 pounds. Now, this is for damage range, bullet velocity, hip fire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. Put on the Aim Op V4, max out the far range. Put on the Demo X2 grip. I increased the aiming idle stability at 0.15 inches. I mean, I don't really think that's too significant. I increased the recoil steadiness by 0.29 ounces. And then I put on a 40-round mag. I don't think there's anything more. Yeah, there's only the 20, and I don't think you should use the 20. Stick with the 40. And just show you guys how good this is. Like I said, this is the AMAX 2.0, except it's not bouncing as much. It just hits as hard. So this is something you definitely want to have in your arsenal. I definitely think it's worth to have on there. And look, long range, short range, mid range, it's incredible. Definitely give it a try.